Flashlights are often a forgotten piece of gear when it comes to everyday carry. Knives, of course, take the top spot, followed by multi-tools, watches, wallets, pry bars, and everything in between. However, surprisingly enough, the simple flashlight is my most used tool without a doubt. I only need to cut things every so often, but light I need almost every single day. And for a while now, I've been carrying these two lights, either the Manker E052 or this newer Skill Hunt, the EC150. And both are really great. They're rechargeable, they're bright, and they're pretty compact, so they disappear in pocket. And for a long time, I thought these were the best I could get. Then about a month or so back, I got my hands on this new light from Woobin. This is the X4, and it pretty quickly blew my mind. Though much larger than the lights I typically carried, it was still pocketable, and more importantly, came with tons of different features and modes, and it packed a hell of a punch. And ever since I got this has been my go-to light, and I cannot recommend it enough. Now imagine if we took this light and we scaled it up and packed in a larger battery so we could have an even higher output. You don't have to imagine very hard because that's exactly what Woobin did. They took this X4 blueprint and they scaled it up and upgraded to this absolute behemoth. Now don't get me wrong, this is not an everyday carry light. It's just simply too big and too heavy. So this instead is a place on my counter leading out in my garage. And this has turned into my dedicated, what the hell was that noise, light for when you hear something outside that goes bump in the night. And though lacking in much of the features and modes as its little brother, this instead ramps up the output through the roof. This thing combines a spotlight, a floodlight, has active cooling with a fan, replaceable batteries, USB-C fast charging, and even a power bank feature all baked into one light. So come with me today as we're taking a closer look at the Woobin X1 Pro, and we're finding out whether this is one of the best high output EDC flashlights you can buy right now. Let's start with what this light actually is. So the X1 Pro is Woobin's newest flagship high-performance flashlight, and unfortunately, it is a price that shows that. This is not a cheap budget light. This is coming in with a retail price around $130 to around $140, which for a flashlight is pretty steep. So what are we getting for this high price? Fortunately, after looking at all the features here, the price starts to make a little bit more sense. First, we have an output of a whopping 12,300 lumens using a combination of flood and spot emitters. It also features 4 different flood LEDs and 1 dedicated spotlight LED, allowing you to run flood, spot, or actually both together. And in my testing, I've been extremely impressed with the output, and I've had quite a bit of fun playing with this outside. And for one, the flood is very wide, covers a very large area, but my favorite by far has to be the spotlight, because in hand, it feels like a true laser beam and can reach extremely far distances. Now this power does come with a little bit of a downside, and that's in the measurements. To have this crazy range and output that this does, this means a big, larger battery. And in turn, this makes it quite heavy, and this comes in at 13.5 ounces, so it's definitely a chunk. The light measures roughly 5.4 inches long and 1.6 wide, so overall it's definitely heavier and larger than your average EDC flashlight, but considering the output and the battery capacity, I think it's pretty impressive. It's again, not something you can just toss in a pocket and forget about it, but for something larger like a jacket pocket or a backpack, this thing's a beast. And like my other lights from Woobin, the machining here is all excellent, the buttons and switches feel really solid, and overall, it has a pretty premium feeling due to the weight and the all-metal construction. Now let's talk about what makes the X1 Pro really unique. I kind of covered it earlier, but essentially you get 3 different lighting systems built into one flashlight. So first off, that far left mode, and this is the spotlight. And the spotlight LED is really designed for distance. Turbo gives you up to 3,650 lumens, and it reaches out roughly 410 meters. It's really great for like scanning trails, checking property lines, or spotting something down in the distance. Brightness levels here include a turbo at 3,650 lumens, a high at 1,200, a medium at 500, a low at 200, and then finally an eco at 10 lumens. And for most real-world use, I found myself using turbo and high just so I can get the maximum output. This is definitely my favorite mode to use, as I really love hitting the edge of the property line or just peering really high up in trees at night, because the throw on this light is seriously impressive. Next up is the flood mode, and you can access this by that far right icon. Instead of creating a really tight beam, this instead fills your surroundings with light. Turbo here reaches around 8,650 lumens with a really wide beam pattern. This mode is really fantastic for checking around a campsite, working around vehicles, walking the trails, or just really general outdoor use. It's really great because you can light up an entire area around you instead of just a small section in front of you. This would really work best for walking in the dark, as you can see a really large area in your path instead of just a really small spot like a normal light. Now we get to the party trick, and it's this middle mode. This is actually spot and flood together, and this is finally where we get the advertised 12,300 lumens. The result is really crazy because you get a really wide spill from the flood emitters while still having a really concentrated hotspot reaching far into the distance. It's kind of one of those lights that make people stop and ask, wait, all that's coming from that flashlight? And I know this because I demoed this light to my wife and my parents over the weekend, and they were all just left stunned, all the light coming just from this little guy. But what's impressive isn't that Woobin isn't just relying solely on short turbo bursts, because in most lights, they hit these really high outputs and they drop it really quickly to save the battery as the lights get really hot at these high temperatures. But here, this actually is an active cooling fan that helps sustain significantly more output than many competing lights. Woobin claims around 3,000 lumens sustained in combined mode, which is extremely impressive, especially for a light this size. The user interface here is actually really straightforward. You can switch between spot, flood, and combined modes without digging through complicated menus and just rely on this really simple toggle switch. And once you selected your beam type, you cycle through the brightness level super simple as well. This is done just by holding in the side button and going through the modes. There's also a strobe, an SOS, and electronic lockout. And one thing to note about the lockout is it actually tells you how to do it on the light itself. Because when not in use, you should probably lock out a light to prevent it from accidentally turning on and running through the battery and burning a hole in your pocket. But I will admit, I'm pretty bad at remembering to lock out a light, as each light has different sequences, so I really love having it spelled out here on the back for a dummy like me. With a light this bright, it's pretty important to actually lock it out to make sure this accidentally doesn't turn on and start a fire somewhere. And overall, I just really appreciate that Woobin didn't overcomplicate things. There's not a crazy UI to remember or cycle through. It's honestly really simple with this switch and just this side button. So for a light with so many features, it's surprisingly easy to use. Battery performance is another major selling point here, because inside there's actually two replaceable 21700 cells totaling 9600 milliamps. And that's a lot of capacity. And because the batteries are replaceable, you're not stuck when they eventually wear out. You can simply just swap in fresh cells and just keep going. And charging is handled by a USB-C port on the side, which features up to 30 watts of fast charging, and Woobin says it can recharge the entire light in 75 minutes under ideal conditions. But here's the cool part. There's actually reverse charging here. So if your phone dies when you're camping or traveling, this flashlight can actually act like a power bank. And I've seen this feature before in other lights, but those have kind of seemed like a gimmick. But it's a little bit different here. Because of the size of these batteries, this will actually charge your phone and top it off, not just a few percent. Though I don't particularly see myself using this as a battery bank, it's nice to know it's there if I need it. After carrying and testing this light, here's some pros and cons and kind of what stands out to me. First off, I really love the incredible output. The combination of flood and throw really creates a great, useful, high output beam pattern, and I really love it. This has quickly become a perfect outdoor flashlight for checking my backyard or high into a tree just to see eyeballs staring back at me at night. I also love this can keep its brightness for longer than normal, because a lot of lights advertise really huge lumen numbers, but very few can actually maintain that. The cooling system here with this fan really helps this stay cool and useful long after a turbo ends. Finally, I really love the replaceable batteries here. Huge win. Love for having replaceable batteries because it means longer service life and unlimited runtime if you carry extras. And factoring in this batteries here, I really like this power bank feature. Though I probably won't use it, it's actually useful in a pinch. But there are some cons here because nothing's perfect. First off, this is heavy. At nearly a pound with the batteries, you're going to notice this in your pocket. This isn't replacing your everyday carry compact flashlight. It's also larger than standard lights, so if you happen to manage to squeeze this into your pocket, you're going to know it's there. Finally, I kind of have some fan concerns. The cooling fan is really impressive and I love seeing it maintain those high outputs, but it's also another moving part. So I'd kind of be worried it's another thing that could potentially break down the road, so I'm not sure about the long-term durability compared to some other passive cooling systems. We'll just have to see. So is this worth the money? Because at a $130 to $140 price point, this definitely isn't a budget flashlight. In fact, this is kind of in the premium realm for what I would consider. I know there are some flashlights pushing well past this price range, but for me, this is near the top of what I'd consider in carry. But when you consider that you're getting a 12,300 lumen output, spot and flood, active cooling, replaceable batteries, USB-C charging, and a power bank capability, there aren't many lights doing all these things in a package actually this compact. So if you're just looking for a really simple EDC light, This is absolutely total overkill, but if you want one flashlight that can handle camping, emergencies, search tasks, travel, work, and just kind of pure fun, the value here starts to make a lot more sense. The Woobin X1 Pro feels like what would happen if a company decides just to throw every feature they can think of into a flashlight and somehow make it all come together and work. It's incredibly bright, it's surprisingly practical, it's one of the most impressive examples I've seen of really balancing extreme output with just everyday usability. Is it perfect? No, it's heavy, it's expensive, and it's probably a lot more flashlight than most people actually need. But if you're the type of person who appreciates like high performance gear and just wants something that stands out from the crowd, this light deserves a serious look. So let me know down in the comments, what's the brightest flashlight you've carried? If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one.